Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name, the program Focal Point, the network AFR Talk, the American Family Radio Talk Network. IRS, apparently, this is breaking news, has issued tax rules for married gay couples. So if gay couples are married in states that recognize same-sex marriages, they can file joint federal tax returns. Now, so that means in 13 states, they're going to be able to do this. Now, what this means, ladies and gentlemen, is the pressure now is going to be enormous. It is going to be absolutely stupendously, overwhelmingly enormous now to get those other 37 states and bring them to heel and to force them to capitulate, because now they will be discriminating against these people who are in sodomy-based marriages. They will be discriminating against them on the basis of their sexual orientation. Doesn't matter what their state constitution says. Doesn't matter what the laws of nature and nature's God say. Doesn't matter what the scriptures teach. Doesn't matter what the citizens of that state have decided they want to be their public policy when it comes to domestic issues. There's going to be this enormous pressure, this hue and cry. We cannot be discriminating against these people in the other 37 states. And it's like I said, President Lincoln said that the United States could not survive half slave and half free. The United States cannot survive. We cannot live half gay and half straight. Something is going to have to give. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. And, Jeff has been doing a good job. And in fact, other websites have picked up on this idea, the first thing I think about in the morning, last thing I think about at night. Jeff's been running that as a part of our opening intro for the last week or so. And here's a radio station. I forget the guy's name. The radio host kind of picked up on that. And they put together a montage. Jeff, we can grab that audio bite. Put together a montage of all the different times that President Obama said, talked about the first thing I think about in the morning, last thing I think about at night. Let's listen.
Something that I spend all my time thinking about is how do we give opportunity to everybody so if they work hard, they can make it in this country.
Maybe I didn't treat you.
Stories I hear are the first thing that I think about in the morning. They're the last thing I think about at night. They're the focus of my attention every waking minute of every day. As president, my greatest responsibility is the security and safety of the American people. As I've said before, that is the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning. It's the last thing that I think about when I go to sleep at night. First thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about when I go to bed is making sure that I'm doing everything I can to keep Americans safe.
You were always on my mind.
Your number one concern is the economy. That's my number one concern. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning. It's the last thing I think about when I go to bed at night.
So that's President Obama talking about what's in his head when he wakes up in the morning, what's in his head when he goes. It's crowded in there. Now, yesterday was the big day on the Mall for race relations, and President Obama's, well, that was a very dreary and tepid and uninspiring speech. I mean, somebody said it was like they just simply extended the Democratic National Convention. And you talk about segregation, you talk about discrimination. There is only one African-American senator, and he wasn't invited. Tim Scott is a black man. He is a senator in the United States Senate, and he was pointedly excluded. He was disinvited, and that had to be on the basis of his political affiliation. So that's just discrimination. He was discriminated against because he had the wrong color skin to be a Republican. Now, here's Walter Williams talking about how far we've come. This is clip number 1. And I also want to make this point. A lot of people don't know this. Well, let me play the Walter Williams clip first. He's saying, look, we need to recognize that we have come a lot farther than anybody thinks. Let's listen.
The civil rights struggle is over, and it is won. Now, I'm not saying that every vestige of discrimination has been eliminated, but the civil rights struggle is over and won. At one time, black Americans did not have the constitutional guarantees of everybody else. Now we do. Now, the fact that the civil rights struggle is over and won does not mean that there are not major problems that black Americans face, but they're not civil rights problems. And if we view them as civil rights problems, the solutions will be elusive forever.
So Walter Williams saying, look, once we couldn't vote, We couldn't drink at the same water fountains. We couldn't sit at the same lunch counters. We couldn't ride in the same section of the buses. And now all of that has been taken care of. That the civil rights battle is over, the struggle is over, and it is won. It has been won for blacks. Walter Williams, a black economics professor. Now here is Charles Krauthammer, clip number 2, talking about the tragedy of the civil rights movement and its refusal to embrace the positive accomplishments of the civil rights movement.
Look, I think the real tragedy is that the prestige and the glory and the courage of the original civil rights movement and many of the martyrs, including Dr. King, has left people living in that age and imagining that that's where the struggle ought to be today. In those days, the struggle was terrible laws, a legal system of segregation and discrimination. That was abolished in that generation. That fight is over. The idea that it's now the voter ID law, I heard one speaker said in the past the problem was the men in sheets who did all of this and wearing hoods on their heads, and now it's people in black robes who strike down the Voting Rights Act. If you're going to equate the Supreme Court with the Klan, you're really living 50 years ago. Today, the challenge is the social issues. It is not changing laws. It's not stand your ground. It is the breakup of the family, and it is the terrible education that young people in the ghettos are subjected to, which ruins their lives from the beginning, and in which Democrats, particularly the teachers' unions, are complicit, and they simply will not face that fact.
So Charles Krauthammer making, I think, a great point. Civil rights leaders today, they are living in the past. They are living as if life is still the same as it was 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and it is not. Let's grab a phone call. Let's go to Jimmy in Gary, Indiana. Jimmy, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, you bet.
If we get Bush, Jeb Bush in 2016, he is the candidate of the global power elites. He's too well connected, and he's definitely a rhino. We need. I like Rand Paul. I'm still learning about Ted Cruz, but I think that if that comment, I didn't hear it, but the comment that you're referencing on your program today from the liberal camp over there is likely just a bait comment. I mean, they would like to put Bush in, Jeb Bush in 2016, because the Dems and the Republicans right now are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And
well, I agree with you, Jimmy, and I think you look at what a liberal says, and anytime you have a liberal telling the Republicans what they've got to do to win the next election, I wouldn't believe one single solitary word of it. It's not like they have any interest in seeing Republicans succeed. So when you've got this guy repeatedly over and over again in that piece, Thomas Edsall, New York Times, that the Republicans could win the election in 2016 unless they nominate a conservative. If they nominate a conservative, it's curtains, it's history, it's in the ash can for the Republican Party. And what that tells me, that's what they're afraid of. The reality is they're afraid that a conservative will get the nomination, and they want a Jeb Bush who's more like a liberal. Back in 2.